Hi everyone, I'm Nadine, one of the creators of Playbox, and I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough of our new instrument. One of the unique things about Playbox is the way it combines chords with sample layering and randomization to create instant and one-of-a-kind results. And whether you're a beat maker or composer, a hobbyist or professional sound designer, Playbox provides new ways to get out of creative ruts and come up with new ideas by simply rolling a dice. But before we dive in, let's take a listen to some of the sounds. Okay, so let's jump in. Sounds in Playbox has 3 different parts. You start with the chords, then you have the samples, and finally the effects. And these cubes you see over here on the main page are actually individual samples, and they could be a vocal, a synth, or another kind of instrument, and they're each playing at a different pitch to form a chord. And this cluster of cubes you see is just a visualization of one chord. There are 8 different chords in a set, and you can play these using just one finger and the 8 keys down here. So I was playing through one chord set just now, and there are around 200 of these sets to choose from, but you can also record your own chords or import MIDI files. It's really up to you. And it's also possible to randomize the samples, which we'll get to in a moment. But before that, let's see what else we have on the main page. There are these useful effects controls down here to help us quickly tweak our sound. Above that, there's an XY pad to morph between different effects. And there's also this dice, which is a randomize button. The dice in Playbox actually randomize different things depending on the page you're on. So, for example, here on the main page, it randomly picks 3 different sets for each sound part. And you can think of sets as individual presets for the chords, the samples, and the effects. There are around 800 sets in total, and you can check them out by clicking on the name of a loaded set, which will take you to the respective browser. There are so many possible combinations just by randomizing the sets, so let's roll the dice and see what happens. You can also click on these smaller dice to randomize sets individually, as well as lock specific ones you like and keep randomizing the rest. To access the global presets browser, just click up here. And in these sounds, we've saved combinations of chords, samples, and effects into one preset, making this a great place to hear the wide spectrum of sounds Playbox can make. Now let's go to the samples page where we can randomize all the samples for our chords. These vertical stacks you see are actually the same chords I played earlier on the main page, but now we can see all 8 chords together as a set. Let's talk about the samples for a moment. The library in Playbox has around 900 samples divided over different categories. You can actually spot which samples belong to each category by the style of the cue. So these pink bubbles are voices, the green ones are synths, these inflated cushions are traditional instruments, the purple ones are bass, and the furry ones are noise samples. You can also load your own samples into Playbox, which we'll cover in the next chapter of the video. Over here is my favorite button, which randomizes all the samples every time you click on it. So let's check it out. You can also randomize the samples vertically, so one chord at a time, and also horizontally. By clicking on the little magnifying glass, that will take you to the samples browser where you can select specific sounds to use in your chords if you want to customize them a bit more. Something that's really useful is the category selector, where you can choose different categories for randomization. Right now, it's set to factory, which means we're randomizing all our factory samples. But we can also just select one category, so we can choose only voices. And now only voice samples show up. Or we can customize the categories in any way we want, so let's choose different ones for each note of our chords. You can also load your own samples into Playbox, and I'll just show you two ways how you can do that. You can drop individual sounds from your browser or desktop directly onto a cube like this. And as you can see, the user samples now have their own dedicated cube to distinguish them from factory sounds. Or we can drop several samples in one of the 5 user slots in the browser, which can hold up to 90 samples each. I'll drop a bunch of my own sounds in the first one. Right now, Playbox is analyzing the root note of all our samples, so we don't have to do this manually. Now that's done, we can set this user category on the samples page and start randomizing. You can hear that Playbox automatically changes the pitch of all our samples to match the notes of our chords, which is a really big time saver. This feature is also great for bringing new life to old sample libraries just sitting on your hard drive. Now, let's say you really like the samples which are being used in one of the chords, and you want to use those samples across the other 7 chords as well. Just click on the spread button below the one you like, and now those samples will be used for the whole chord set. This comes in handy if you want all your chords to keep the same vibe. Let's try a different set. If you want to change the musical key of Playbox, you can do that up here. Right now, it's set to G major, but let's change it to A minor. And one thing that's really handy is the key lock feature, which when switched on, will automatically load all of your chord sets in that key. If you want to change some of the notes in your chords, you can do that on the chords page. You can also record your own chords if you like. I'm actually going to switch on the built-in piano sound while I record some notes. It's also possible to import chord progressions into Playbox as a MIDI file. I'm going to drop this one from my browser directly onto the chords page. And as you can see, this MIDI file has 4 chords in it, which have now been automatically mapped onto the first 4 keys. If you want to use any of the chord sets from Playbox with other instruments in your DAW, you can click on this button over here and drag it to a MIDI track. I'm using Ableton Live, but this will work in other DAWs in the exact same way. Okay, so the last thing we're going to look at is the effects page. And the chain starts with the motion effects, which add rhythms or textures to your sound. I'm just going to switch on the up. Now let's try the grain effect. Next to that, we have the lo-fi section, where you can add ambience such as rain or vinyl crackle. There are around 50 samples to choose from, but you can also drop your own samples here if you like. And this section is also where we can tweak a sound to get a degraded vintage tape feeling. We can add up to 6 audio effects in the slots over here, and can change the order of the effects by clicking on a slot and moving it around. Over here, in the last section, are all the different modulation sources like LFOs, mod steps, and different envelopes. And if you want to assign modulation to any of the parameters, just click on the plus sign and turn up the amount. To assign some effects to your macro controls, the XY pad, or to your mod wheel, just follow the same steps. To switch off the whole effects chain, just click on the little button in the Effects tab. That's our quick rundown of Playbox. I hope this was helpful, and for more information and to hear some of the different audio demos, head to nativeinstruments.com. Thanks for watching.